You slept. You actually slept. Not a nap, not a couple of hours on the couch, a full night. Hours in bed, eyes closed, the whole thing. And you woke up tired, not a little groggy, not just slow to start. Tired in a way that the sleep did not touch. Tired in a way that feels like it is coming from somewhere the pillow cannot reach. You have been here before. Maybe you have been here for months. Maybe you have been here so long that you cannot remember what it felt like to wake up actually rested. And the most frustrating part, the part that makes the exhaustion feel even heavier, is that nothing is technically wrong. You are functioning. You are showing up. You are doing the things that need to be done. You are meeting the deadlines, answering the messages, showing up for the people who need you. But underneath all of it, underneath the showing up and the functioning and the performance of being okay, there is this constant, heavy, unreachable exhaustion, like you are running on something close to empty. And no amount of sleep, no weekend off, no quiet Sunday morning, no week of vacation is getting you back to full. You come back from rest still tired. You finish a day of doing nothing and feel no better than when it started. You sleep in and wake up wondering why the extra hours did not help. Here is what you need to hear right now. You are not broken, but you are burning something that sleep cannot replace. And until you understand exactly what that something is and where it is going, the exhaustion will not lift no matter what you try. That is what this is about. Not quick fixes, not a morning routine, not a list of habits to add to an already full life. The real source of why you feel this way and what genuinely changes it. Stay with this, because what comes next changes everything. Here is the first thing you need to understand, and this reframes the entire conversation. Most exhaustion is not physical. Read that again. The tiredness you feel in your body, the heavy limbs, the slow thoughts, the fog that sits behind your eyes, the inability to feel rested even after hours of rest, all of that is real, completely real. But it is not originating in the body. It is originating somewhere else entirely and sending its signal through the body. Here is how this actually works. Your brain is the most metabolically expensive organ you have. It makes up roughly 2% of your body weight, but consumes somewhere between 20 and 25% of your total energy. Think about that for a moment. One organ, a quarter of everything your body produces just to run itself. And when the brain is under sustained load, when it is running complex emotional processing, managing ongoing stress, suppressing feelings that have nowhere to go, monitoring social situations for safety, carrying tension that has never been resolved, it burns through resources at a rate that the body genuinely cannot replenish overnight. You wake up tired because your brain works through the night, not on dreams, on everything you did not finish processing during the day, the conversation that did not reach a real resolution, the worry that turned over and over without landing anywhere, the feeling you pushed down because there was no space to feel it in the middle of your day, the decision you have been circling for weeks without making, the thing that happened last month that you said you were fine about and were not. All of that is still running, quietly, continuously, in the background of every waking hour and every sleeping one. And it is costing you energy that you cannot see leaving. This is why you can sleep 8 hours and wake up feeling like you barely slept. The hours were there. The recovery was not. Because recovery requires something the night cannot provide on its own. It requires the thing that was left unfinished to finally be finished. The thing that was unfelt to finally be finished. The thing being held to finally be put down. But here is what most people miss about why this happens in the first place. It is not that your life is too hard. It is that you have been carrying things that were never meant to be carried indefinitely. Think honestly about what you are holding right now. Not the obvious things, the quiet ones, the low-grade worry that sits just underneath the surface and never fully resolves, the relationship that requires constant management and careful navigation, the version of yourself you perform at work versus who you actually are when nobody is watching, the expectations you accepted years ago and have never stopped to question, the grief that got set aside because there was not time for it and still has not been given its time, the anger that got swallowed because expressing it felt dangerous or impossible, the dreams that got quieter and quieter over the years until you stopped listening for them, the needs you have stopped naming because naming them and not getting them was more painful than simply not having them. None of these feel dramatic on their own. Each one feels small. Each one feels like something a capable person should be able to just carry. But they are not in isolation. They are all running simultaneously, all the time, in the same system, drawing from the same resources, competing for the same limited bandwidth. And the system, your specific nervous system, was not designed to hold all of that indefinitely without some form of relief, release, or resolution. The exhaustion you feel is not weakness. It is an accurate report. The load exceeds the capacity. The output exceeds the input. The giving exceeds the receiving. And the solution is not more sleep. It is an honest reckoning with what is being carried, and a willingness to put some of it down. Here is where it gets really uncomfortable. Because this is the part most people skip when they think about their exhaustion. A significant portion of what is draining you right now, today, is not circumstance. It is choice, not conscious choice, not deliberate, eyes-open choice, but choice nonetheless. The choice to stay in a dynamic that consistently costs more than it gives. The choice to keep performing okayness you do not actually feel. The choice to hold limits that have never been named or enforced. The choice to keep saying yes to things the honest version of you wants to say no to. The choice to absorb other people's discomfort rather than allowing them to feel it. The choice to stay small in situations where taking up your full space would cause friction. Every one of those choices has an energy cost, not a visible cost, not a cost that announces itself on a single day, a slow, cumulative, compounding drain. Like a battery with a very slow leak. You recharge a little each night. You add a little back on weekends. You take a vacation and feel almost full for a few days, but the leak is steady, and over time the leak is bigger than the recharge, so the baseline drops, not dramatically, gradually, slowly enough that you barely notice it happening. Month by month the floor drops a little lower, until one day you wake up, having slept a full 8 hours, and you are operating at 40%. And you do not know when 40% became normal. You do not remember when you stopped expecting to feel fully restored. You adapted to a new definition of okay that is nowhere near what okay should actually feel like. And the scariest part is this: you have gotten good at functioning at 40%. So good that nobody around you can see it. So good that you sometimes cannot even see it yourself. Until you sit still long enough for the weight to become visible, like right now. Here is something that will completely reframe how you understand your own exhaustion. You are not tired because you are doing too much. You are tired because you are doing too much of the wrong things. Stay with that distinction because it changes everything. There are activities that cost energy, and there are activities that restore it. And the key insight is this: the line between those two categories is not work versus rest. It is not busy versus not busy. It is not productive versus unproductive. The line is alignment. Activities that are aligned with who you actually are, with your genuine values, your real interests, the version of yourself that feels most fully alive. Those activities leave you more energized than when you started, even when they are difficult. Even when they require significant effort, even when they are uncomfortable or challenging or push you past the edges of what is easy, because the energy they generate is different in kind from the energy they consume. They draw from one account and deposit into another. Activities that are misaligned, that require you to perform a version of yourself that is not quite you, that ask you to suppress your actual reactions and produce appropriate ones, that feel like going through motions without any real investment in the outcome. Those activities drain you even when they look restful. This is why you come back from certain vacations feeling emptier than when you left. Why certain social gatherings leave you flat. Why some relationships, however comfortable they look from the outside, leave you quietly depleted every time you engage with them. Why some jobs pay well and feel like they are slowly hollowing you out. The exhaustion is the misalignment speaking. It is the gap between who you are and what you are spending your hours doing, accumulating into a depletion that no amount of sleep or rest or relaxation can touch. Because the problem is not in the hours. The problem is in the how, and misalignment does not fix itself with more rest. It fixes itself with honesty, with the willingness to look clearly at where your time and energy are actually going, and whether the things receiving them are worthy of the cost. Now here is the piece that hits hardest. The single most exhausting thing the person can do is not work. It is not being themselves. Think about the energy performance actually costs. Every single day, in how many different situations are you presenting a version of yourself that is calibrated for how it will be received rather than who you actually are? At work, where you edit your reactions before speaking. In certain friendships, where the real version of what you think or feel would change things. In family situations where old roles run automatically and the authentic you gets crowded out by the version everyone expects. In social situations where the real you feels like too much, or not enough, or simply too complicated for the context, the performance is constant, and it is extraordinarily expensive. Every moment you are editing your reactions, making the calculation between the honest response and the appropriate one, costs energy. Every situation where you are managing your presentation rather than simply being present costs energy. Every relationship that requires a curated version of you, the version that shows the acceptable parts and hides the rest, costs energy. None of these feel dramatic. None of them feel like they should be this costly. They each feel like small adjustments, reasonable accommodations, just being appropriate for the context. But here is what nobody accounts for. It never stops. The habit of monitoring and managing the presentation of yourself does not clock out. It does not take weekends. It does not turn off when you are alone. It runs in the background of everything, even in your quiet moments, even in your rest. Asking the same question on a loop. How am I coming across? Is this okay? Am I too much? Am I not enough? And that loop, run continuously over days and weeks and years, is one of the primary sources of exhaustion that nobody is naming. Here is what you are missing about emotional exhaustion specifically, and this matters more than almost anything else. It is not the emotions themselves that drain you, it is the suppression of them. Here is the crucial difference. Feeling something fully, letting the anger or the grief or the fear or the sadness actually move through you, allowing it to be real, giving it space, acknowledging it honestly, is not actually that expensive in terms of energy. Emotions are designed to move. They complete a cycle. They arrive at the surface, reach a peak, and then they pass. That is what the word emotion originally meant. Energy in motion. Something designed to flow, not to be held. What is genuinely exhausting is blocking the cycle, catching the feeling before it surfaces, holding the anger down while the situation continues, performing okayness over the grief because this is not the time or place, managing the fear into something that looks like composure, because composure is what the situation requires. Pretending the sadness is not there because the people around you need you to be functional right now. That holding, That constant, active suppression of what is actually moving through you is one of the most metabolically expensive things the nervous system does. It is not passive. Suppression is work, hard work, invisible work, work that consumes resources around the clock, even while you sleep. This is why you have dreams that tire you. This is why you wake up already tense, with a jaw that is clenched before you are even fully conscious. This is why the body carries a tightness in the shoulders, the chest, the stomach, that you have stopped noticing because it is always there. It has become the baseline, but the baseline is wrong. That tightness is suppression, running as infrastructure, costing everything, silently, constantly. And the exhaustion it produces is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of a system working incredibly hard to manage something that would cost far less to simply feel. Here is something worth understanding about a specific kind of exhaustion most people never name: decision fatigue. You make hundreds of decisions every single day. Most of them are completely invisible to you. What to say in this message? What to leave out? How to phrase the thing to minimize the chance of friction? Whether to push back on this or let it go this time? Whether to mention what is bothering you or absorb it for the 100th time? What version of yourself to present in this particular context? Whether the situation is safe enough to be fully honest? Whether you have enough goodwill banked with this person to spend some of it now? Whether the cost of saying what you actually think is worth it today? Each of those decisions draws from the same limited resource pool, and that pool, despite what the relentlessly productive culture tells you, is not infinite. Every choice you make, every option you weigh, every deliberation you run draws something from it. By midday, the pool is lower. By evening, it is significantly depleted. And by the time you reach the decisions that actually matter in your life, the creative work, the real conversations, the choices that will determine the actual direction of your actual future, you are making them with whatever is left at the bottom of the pool, the dregs. This is why you feel mentally foggy in the evenings, why you cannot think clearly after a full day of seemingly ordinary activities, why the creative project you care about most gets whatever is left after everything else has taken what it needed, which is usually almost nothing. The solution to this is not pushing harder. It is not trying to think better under depleted conditions. It is protecting the resource by spending less of it on things that do not deserve it. Fewer performance calculations early in the day, less managing of other people's reactions, less monitoring of how you are coming across. More of the direct, honest, low-friction version of yourself, which costs dramatically less than the managed version, as early as possible. The energy you save on the small, invisible decisions is the energy available for the things that matter. Here is the midpoint truth, the one that reframes everything. You are not exhausted because life is hard. You are exhausted because you are fighting yourself. Fighting to maintain the performance of someone you are not quite sure you are. Fighting to suppress what your body and nervous system are telling you needs to be felt. Fighting to stay in situations and dynamics that the honest version of you knows are costing too much. Fighting to keep producing from a place of depletion because stopping feels more dangerous than continuing. Fighting to be acceptable, manageable, easy, low maintenance, fine, okay, not a problem. That internal friction, the constant low-grade civil war between what you feel and what you show, between what you need and what you are allowing yourself to ask for, between who you actually are and who you are presenting to the world, is not a minor background process. It is the primary engine of your depletion, not the workload, not the schedule, not the demands of other people, the friction. And here is what makes this the most important thing in this entire script. Friction is internal, which means it is yours to reduce, not by changing everything around you, not by waiting for circumstances to improve, by changing the relationship you have with yourself. by choosing one honest moment at a time to be more of who you actually are rather than less. Let us talk about what actually restores you, not what relaxes you, not what distracts you, what genuinely, measurably restores the thing that is depleted. Because relaxation and restoration are not the same thing. Relaxation is the absence of demand. You are not being asked for anything. The pressure is temporarily off. That matters, but it is not sufficient for what you are experiencing. Restoration is different. Restoration is the return of something that was taken, the refilling of something that was emptied, the repair of something that was worn. And what gets depleted in chronic exhaustion is not just physical energy. It is the connection to yourself, the thread between who you actually are and how you are actually living. When that thread gets thin, when the performance runs consistently enough that you lose track of what is underneath it, when the managed version of yourself runs on autopilot for long enough that you genuinely cannot remember what the unmanaged version feels like, the exhaustion goes to a level that sleep cannot reach. Because what is exhausted is not your body, it is your sense of self. Your relationship with your own inner life, the felt sense of being a real person with a real interior, rather than a function moving through a series of contexts. Real restoration requires contact with something genuine, something that is not performance, not management, not calibrated for how it will be received, simply undeniably yours. For some people that looks like creative work that has no audience. For some it is physical movement that is genuinely enjoyed rather than forced. For some it is time in nature with no destination and no agenda. For some, it is the specific kind of conversation where nothing needs to be managed and everything can be said. For some, it is solitude so complete that there is no version of yourself to perform for anyone. The form matters less than the quality. The quality is this: for a sustained period, you are not performing. You are simply existing, as you are, without the monitoring, without the editing, without the gap between what you feel and what you show. In those moments, something the system has been waiting to do finally becomes possible. Recovery. Real, actual, deep recovery. Not from physical effort, from the effort of being someone other than yourself. Here is something almost nobody discusses when they talk about chronic tiredness: the exhaustion of unfinished things. Your mind is not neutral about open loops. This is not a metaphor. This is how the cognitive system actually works. Every unfinished conversation that still sits unresolved, every decision that has been circled without being made, every commitment you made to yourself and then quietly abandoned, every difficult thing you know needs to be addressed and has been steadily, carefully avoided. Everything that happened that you never fully processed. Every relationship that exists in an uncertain state you have not clarified. These are not passive entries on a mental list. They are active processes, running in the background, drawing cognitive resources, occupying working memory, contributing to the constant low hum of unfinished business that never fully quiets. The project you have been meaning to start for 6 months. The relationship you have not been fully honest inside, the version of your life you keep planning to move toward when things settle, the conversation you have been rehearsing internally for weeks without having externally, the apology that needs to be made, the boundary that needs to be set, the thing you need to stop doing but have not stopped doing. All of it is running, all the time. Whether or not you are consciously thinking about it, at a cost that compounds silently across days and weeks. Here is the surprising truth about closed loops. Even the hard ones, even the ones you have been avoiding because opening them feels costly. The conversation that needs to happen, even if it is difficult, costs less energy when it is complete than it does being anticipated indefinitely. The decision that needs to be made, even if it is imperfect, costs less than the endless background cycling of indecision. The honest thing that needs to be said, even if saying it is uncomfortable, costs less over time than the suppression of it. The anticipation of the hard thing almost always exceeds the cost of the hard thing itself, and the energy you are currently spending carrying the undone things is almost always greater than the energy required to do them. Do the things, not all at once, not perfectly, not in some heroic burst of completion. One thing, the one that has been sitting the longest, the one that your nervous system nudges you toward and then pulls you away from. Do that one. And feel what closes when it closes, because what closes is a process that has been running, and every process that stops running returns something to you. Bandwidth. Clarity. The quiet that comes when one less thing is turning over in the background. That quiet is energy. Now let us talk about the people in your life, because some of your exhaustion has a name, not as a judgment, not as a reason to blow up relationships or make dramatic declarations, just as an honest observation that most people resist making. Some of the people in your life are energy sources. Time with them leaves you with more than you had going in. Conversations that feel genuinely restorative, presence that is easy rather than managed. Relationships where you can be fully yourself without any editing, without any cost. Where your honesty is not a risk but a given. Where your needs are not a burden but a reasonable thing to have. And some of the people in your life are energy costs. Not bad people. Not people who deserve blame or judgment, just dynamics that consistently take more from you than they return. The relationship where every interaction requires significant emotional management afterward. The person whose mood you track constantly and adjust yourself around. The dynamic where you always feel responsible for how things land. The connection that leaves you consistently flat or tense, or quietly resentful, or emptier than when you arrived. If you were to honestly map the people in your life against the energy they tend to return or consume, the correlation between your depletion and certain specific relationships would become visible. Not always clean, not always simple. Real relationships are complicated and people are more than their patterns, but visible. And visibility is the beginning of an honest choice, not necessarily the choice to end things, not the choice to punish anyone, the choice to be honest with yourself about what costs what, to stop pretending that certain dynamics are neutral when they are not, to make deliberate, eyes-open decisions about where your limited energy actually goes, because the person who gives endlessly from depletion has nothing real to give. Not to the people who deserve it, not to the work that matters, not to the work that matters, not to themselves. You cannot pour from empty, and tending to what fills you is not selfishness. It is the precondition for having anything genuine to offer. Here is the thing about rest that most people are completely getting wrong. And this one is important. Most people are not actually resting when they think they are resting. They are distracting, and distracting and rest are not the same thing. Here is what most people call rest after a hard day. Scrolling through a feed, watching content, one video leading to another, passively absorbing whatever the algorithm decides to put in front of them, background noise while technically doing nothing, entertainment that requires nothing but keeps the brain occupied. All of these activities share one critical quality. They occupy attention without restoring resources. The brain during passive consumption is not at rest. It is still processing, still taking in stimuli, still generating responses, however small, to everything passing through, still making micro-decisions about what to engage with and what to scroll past, still having emotional responses to content designed to produce them. The system is occupied, not restored. What the system needs in order to actually recover, in order to do the deep processing that results in genuine restoration, is something almost no one gives it anymore. genuine stillness, genuine emptiness, genuine absence of input, walking without headphones, sitting without a screen, eating a meal without anything else happening, existing in a moment without consuming anything from it. In those genuinely empty spaces, the brain does something it cannot do when occupied. It processes what has accumulated. It sorts what needs sorting. It makes connections between things that the directed, task-focused mind was too busy to see. It releases what has been held. It quiets what has been running on a loop. This is not nothing. This is arguably the most important work the brain does. And it can only happen in the gap that has been systematically filled by content, by noise, by the endless availability of something to look at. Leave the gap, just sometimes, just for 10 minutes, just for one walk, just for one meal, and notice what happens in the quiet. Because what happens is not emptiness. What happens is not emptiness. What happens is that you can finally hear yourself. Here is what changes when the exhaustion genuinely lifts. And this matters because it tells you what you are actually recovering toward. The first thing that comes back is not energy. It is not motivation. It is not drive or ambition or the desire to do more. The first thing that comes back is interest, a genuine, alive curiosity about your own life, not managing the day, not getting through it, not performing okay from the outside while running on fumes inside. Actually present in it, actually curious about what happens next, actually capable of being moved by small things because the buffer of exhaustion is no longer deadening everything. That interest, that forward-leaning quality that a mind not running on empty naturally has, is what the lived experience of being yourself actually feels like. Not dramatically, not lemmatically, not like some transformation, like the difference between watching a film through frosted glass and watching it clearly. Everything is the same, everything is different. The conversations feel different, not because the people changed, because you are actually there in them, not managing them from a distance, not surviving them while depleted, but actually in them. The ordinary moments of your day reveal something they have been hiding. They are enough. When you are actually present for them, they are enough. The small pleasures, the quiet satisfactions, the genuine moments of connection that exhaustion was flattening into background noise, they become real again. And that realness, that return to genuine experience, rather than managed functioning, is what the recovery is actually for. Not to be more productive, not to have more energy for output, to actually live the life you are living, rather than surviving it from a distance while waiting to feel better. Here is where we leave this, not with instructions, not with a list of things to do, with a question worth sitting with honestly. What are you carrying that you were never meant to carry this long? Not the obvious things, not the things you already know about, the quiet ones, the feeling that found no exit and has been waiting, the situation you have been managing instead of resolving, the version of yourself you perform that costs everything and returns nothing real, the relationship that requires all of you and gives back too little, the dream that got quieter and quieter because you stopped protecting the space for it, the need you stopped naming because naming it and not having it met was more painful than simply going without. What is still running right now in the background of this moment at a cost you have been pretending is acceptable? Because whatever that is where the exhaustion lives, not in your schedule, not in how much you sleep, not in what you eat or how often you exercise or whether your morning routine is optimal. In carrying, in the gap between who you are and how you are living, in the friction between what you feel and what you show, in the weight of everything held without being released. And the carrying can change, not through force, not through a dramatic reorganization of your entire life, Not even through deciding to feel differently, through honest attention, through turning toward the thing rather than past it, through letting the feeling be real rather than managing it into something more appropriate, through choosing to close one loop that has been running too long, through putting down one thing that was never yours to hold indefinitely, through being in one moment more honestly yourself than you were in the moment before. That is how this changes. Incrementally, quietly, one honest choice at a time. And the exhaustion as the weight reduces does not lift all at once, but it lifts bit by bit. As each thing carried is finally set down, as each loop finally closes, as each moment of genuine rest, real rest, allows what needed processing to finally be processed. The version of you on the other side of this is not a different person. It is you, with less on top of you. And that version, lighter, clearer, more present, more genuinely here, is what you have been carrying the weight toward all this time without knowing it. Start setting it down. One thing. Today, not because it is easy, because it is time.